And you're my quality control. Captivates your party patrol. Your mind, body, and soul. For who the bell tolls, let the rhythm explode. Big, bad, and bold, B-boys of old. And you're my quality control. Captivates your party patrol. Your mind, body, and soul. For who the bell tolls, let the rhythm explode.
Thanks for joining today's Vincent Talk, focused on business strategy. For those of you that have never joined us before, welcome to your first time. And for those of you that have, we appreciate you coming back and participating once again. Vincent Talks is a monthly webinar series for those interested in staying up to date with what's happening in tech development, user experience, design, and business strategy. To give a bit of context, so Vincent, the company that helps host these, we're a custom software development and design agency, originally from Finland, but have our US headquarters in Irvine, California. And we really created Vincent Talks as a way to drive engagement with notable industry leaders and passionate experts to help share the latest developments in tech. We hope that everyone that attends these talks, whether they be business owners, developers, designers, marketers, or even recruiters, that you're able to walk away with some new valuable information pertinent to your company or your career. Today, as we mentioned, we are focused on business strategy. So we're going to do our first ever Fireside Chat with SixThreeZero CEO Dustin Gyger. And he's really going to share with us his e-commerce adventure and how his digital business strategy has evolved in our current economic climate. And chatting with him is going to be Vincent's very own SVP of Strategy and Partnerships, Sean Richards. So seeing as we're now a few minutes after, I think hopefully everyone's had enough time to jump on in if they're joining. I'll hand things on over to Sean.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Welcome, everybody. And welcome our special guest, Dustin. I'm excited to have you. And just a quick intro, as Rachel mentioned, Dustin's the CEO at 630 Bicycle Company. They're a nationwide company selling bikes, mostly online, and they're based in Los Angeles, California, so pretty close to all of us. He started in this for a need for more affordable bicycles and really just exponentially added more and more products as he saw a lot of customers' desires for unique bicycles that fit their needs. So he'll be able to talk more about that, a little bit about his background and why he started this company and where he's taking it so far. He's previously held some positions at Firmstrong Bikes, WB Television Network, specializing in social media marketing, advertising, and sales. So coming into starting his company, he came in with a lot of idea and understanding of how to start and grow a business exponentially, including online advertising. So before we jump into our chat, we will be going back and forth between myself and Dustin. I did want to announce, if you haven't saw this already, that we are going to be giving away a 630 gift card. That audience member that will receive that will be selected at random, and they'll be selected before this end of this Vincent Talk. So during this time, we'll go ahead and put a link in the chat room of Zoom that you can get to the sign up form. By signing up, you'll be eligible for the 630 gift card, and you'll also be signed up for 630's newsletter called Journey Club, and we'll talk a little bit more about Journey Club later in the conversation as well. So be sure to sign up before we end the hour. So, and just last note before we jump in, please use the questions and answers at the bottom of Zoom if you have questions that you would like to ask Dustin during this time or myself, and we will try to get to them during this conversation or at the end where it makes sense. So feel free to chime into the conversation as we move along. So I think we'll go ahead and jump in, get started. And I'd love to ask Dustin, if you want to just give a brief introduction about 630, yourself and the company.
Sure, yeah, thanks. So we started in 2005. We originally started in Hermosa Beach, California, focused mainly on retail. I personally grew up in the Midwest, came out to California in 2003, and moved down to the beach and was introduced to these bikes called beach cruisers, which you didn't see too many of out in the Midwest. And basically fell in love with them when we were living in Hermosa. Bike riding culture there, for anyone that knows, down on the Strand is a huge piece of life. And yeah, I just took to it. At the time, beach cruisers were on an upward trend, and e-commerce was still kind of in its infancy, especially for the type of product like a bicycle, which I think is still being developed in the e-commerce world. And we popped up a website, found a garage, and the rest is history. And so it's been 15 years, and we've navigated through sort of the transition from brick and mortar to online. Really a changing environment in the bike world too for our product. Um, and yeah, so we ultimately had 5 stores going at one point, and now we've switched to 100% e-commerce business and focusing on direct to consumer and wholesale, but with a focus on wholesale um, to online websites. So no store wholesale. That pretty much, yeah, sums it up.
That actually leads me right to my first question I want to make sure and ask is, you know, we know that your bikes have been seen in such big retailers like Walmart and Target and Kohl's, but can you talk a little bit more about why you chose to focus online only for your brand, and why the brick and mortar change to online happened, and any advantages, disadvantages that you found there?
Yeah. Originally, when we started, you know, in 2005, I think e-commerce, you know, in my mind, I didn't have sort of the business awareness. So I think there was this fear that you couldn't sell online if you didn't have a store presence. And our strategy or thought process was having the store added a certain element of trust to the consumer. And so we sort of led with a store strategy first, and the online was a marketing platform to drive into the store. I think also, you know, again, staying too much in the comfort zone of looking how the industry had operated, the bike industry in particular was very much dominated um, by stores, and thinking, you know, the need of having to have things assembled and go to your local store kind of made us just think that that's the way we needed to do it. Um, and then I think, you know, over time, and so our business was always about a 50-50 split early on between e-commerce and store. Um, and what happened over time is we were sort of riding the wave of the beach cruiser market in general. So that was sort of trending up, which was allowing us to have these stores specific to our product line. And we made it through the 2008 downturn just fine, because we deal in more of a lower price point versus some, you know, normal bike shops have an average price point of about $700. We're more in the $300 range. But yeah, after we came out of 2008, basically 2010, the beach cruiser trend sort of fell off a cliff, and there just wasn't enough local demand to support localized stores. The other thing that greatly affected us was Google's search algorithm change. And I know a lot of businesses out there went through that. They changed their algorithm, made a massive update, and basically localized the search results. And so what we were, at that point, we were able to drive, before the change, we were driving traffic from all over the state of California. Our stores were sort of mega stores. So we were able to pull in people from 60 to 120 miles away because they wanted to come to the beach cruiser store. And after the sort of localization with Google happened, it really cut our traffic down by like 80%. And so it's sort of, you know, the whole strategy of the local marketing and everything really needed to change. And we just couldn't do it fast enough to drive enough people to support the rent. And we were also finding that driving local demand to a beach cruiser store, let's say local demand meaning within a, you know, 7-mile radius, just wasn't enough people. And so at that point, the stores kind of started to dwindle. And in general, the bike industry has been a lot of consolidation over the last 10 years. Bike stores have been closing Less bikes haven't been getting sold, but bigger stores have been selling more bikes, and smaller mom and pops are closing, which I think is true of many industries. So it went from about 4,400 bike shops, which down to maybe 3,300 now. I haven't checked the exact number, but yeah, that kind of just, it was sort of a natural progression. I can't say it was 100% strategy and going against the grain. It was sort of the market just telling us. And then as it is now, we've decided to focus exclusively on online and really put our resources so we can try to be a leader in developing online technologies around buying a bike online. I think a lot of, there's still a lot of bike shops out there, and they're focusing on still the brick and mortar selling tactics, which there's still a market for that. But we really want to do innovative things, both on the platform side, and the process side, and the logistics side. And so for us, not having infinite resources, it just makes sense to channel everything into one one strategy. And so far so good.
Great. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome information to know. And there's always going to be a challenge with online marketing that changes with Google and other technologies that challenge us. I did have one question before my next one that came from an audience member that's contextual to what you were just saying, is how many bikes a year do you bring into the market today?
Well, I don't want to disclose too much on that front. I would say, looking at it this year, the bike industry is up about 400%. And, we're definitely in the thousands of bikes a year. So, and looking at the bike industry as a whole, actually, I don't have the numbers recently, but yeah, I mean, there's millions of bikes coming into the US per year, which leaves us a huge opportunity. And we're still growing. And the interesting thing is the online is still a very small percentage of that overall.
That's great. I think coastal will probably have a chance of running into your bikes, up and down California for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
For my next question, it was really to piggyback on the challenges you were talking about related to Google. What are some of the other challenges beyond that you would suggest an e-commerce based business similar to yours that a traditional retail store doesn't deal with? Maybe things like inventory and shipping, logistics, or similar.
Yeah, I think there's many things. I think one thing is definitely the back end logistics is getting product to people on time, especially now that you're competing with the likes of Amazon, and people are expecting everything to show up at their house in 2 days, regardless of it being purchased on Amazon or being purchased from you. So a big struggle for me is how do I execute to that level with a small business. Fortunately, now in this day and age, there's a lot of logistics companies that are popping up with these networks that seem to work, that can be plugged into APIs through websites and make that a lot simpler. It's interesting because when we started, a lot of these apps and plugins and all these things didn't really exist. So it was more of the wild, wild west in terms of how can you streamline the business. But I think the other big challenge, which I think is very similar to brick and mortar, around finding a location for e-commerce, it's really platform. And I think the scalability of your platform, the usability of your platform, how it functions, keeping up with it, that's been a big challenge for us. Again, especially as a small business, finding the extra capital to invest into your platform to stay up to date on the newest technology. Right now in the e-commerce world, I mean, if you're not updating your website in a year, there are lots of new plugins, apps, things you can be using that could be literally saving you thousands and thousands of dollars a year from a personnel standpoint, from a speed to customer standpoint. Yeah, and I think, when you look at the e-commerce landscape, you see a lot of websites that maybe aren't up to the highest level, and there's a lot that can be missed by not having, a site that's current.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And we're going to talk a little bit later about your customers and customer service and how technology has changed that. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask is, has there been anything that just kind of outright has shocked you while growing your business, good or bad, anything that just you didn't expect and it compelled your business to move forward or presented a challenge that you had to face?
So many things. I think, going back to what I said originally about Google, I think that was the biggest shock. We were one of the early companies to really take advantage of the Google algorithm. And quite honestly, that's how we built the entire business, was by getting ranked #1 on Google. And again, back then, Yahoo, AOL, um, and Google all existed as search engines. And, Google started to emerge as the clear leader, after, into the later 2000s. But when we started, obviously there were ways to really cheat the system, and the whole idea of the algorithm and the improvements wasn't something people knew about. We didn't really understand what Google's strategy was going to be and how they were going to refine it, and quite honestly, how important search was going to become culturally. I think we look at Google now as the end all be all of all answers to everything. Um, but back then there were, nobody knew, no one knew anything about it. And so when the algorithm changed, it really was a big eye opener around many things. One being the diversification of your lead gen and your marketing, and not being 100% reliant on that. Um, because, if your #1 position goes away, then your whole business could be gone. And, I was mixed in with a whole pool of other customers that are companies that suffered the same thing. So, and we were lucky to recover from that and diversify and, switch to more, white hat tactics on SEO and things like that. But that was a really big changing point, in terms of everything, because that also was the beginning of the end for the retail stores. And it also proved to us that the majority of our store traffic was coming from Google. I think back then, again, we didn't have the sort of tracking and analytics that we have now. So you always had a gut feeling that Google was driving a lot of store traffic, but you weren't really able to correlate it as much as you can today. And so it really proved everything. And it also sort of proved to me that the e-com was the future. And that was like the turning point. That was really one of the things where it's like, okay, if we do this right, if we do it well, we could drive way more sales. And that's kind of what happened. I think, the other thing that's happened in recent times on the product side is the tariff situation. That was a big eye opener. And I think for all companies in the US was, how quickly your cost basis can change. For us in particular in the bike industry, our import tariffs were 11% on standard bikes prior to the Trump administration, and after they went up to 36%. So from a cash flow perspective, from a pricing perspective, that put us in a really, really tight circumstance for about 14 months as we were working with our retailers to raise prices and raise our costs to them. And it was challenging because a lot of people were trying to hold their ground, saying they would go away, while we were basically working on zero margin to survive. So I think those are two of the most major things in the last 15 years.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I think the way you've been able to adjust, and I know we haven't talked about your growth since, the pandemic has, really kind of shaken up everybody's business, but we can certainly get to that in a little bit, how your growth has increased substantially. When you talk about searchability, one of the companies that ends up in every single search you could possibly put out there because they have every product out there is Amazon. And I noticed that you've also made sure to maintain an Amazon store as a complement to your core website. Can you just tell us a little bit about, your thoughts behind an Amazon store? How did that increase your visibility and search results? And do you recommend that for other e-commerce product companies to take that approach?
Yeah. So there's actually multiple ways to sell on Amazon. We are actually a wholesaler to Amazon. So we're they're retailing our products to their consumers and we sell to them. I know their other option is to have a seller account. We found the best relationship in particular with our product and our size of product to work by selling wholesale to Amazon, because we can really tap into their network of warehouses and their shipping rates to consumers, which allows just exponential more volume. In terms of strategy with Amazon, I think it's what a lot of businesses, e-commerce businesses, will say. It's, one of those things where it's great to have, but also challenging to manage. Their pricing algorithms can change your retail price in a second, and it can do whatever it wants based on different variables. So that can provide a challenge if you're trying to not have customers call you direct and ask, why is the price this and that? What's going on Amazon, things of that nature. For us personally, I've found it to be a hugely beneficial relationship because of the exposure. And I think I'm just going to spew off a metric here. I don't know if it's correct, but I want to say 50% of all product searches start now on Amazon, something of that nature. So, when we look at it, I look at it as a sales partner. I also look at it as a search relevancy and marketing partner. So, being number one on Amazon now is actually number one from a position for a keyword, is probably worth more than on Google. Unless you have a brick and mortar type business, but if you're online only, being in that number one product position on Amazon is huge. I've seen other e-commerce websites do just direct to consumer and not be on Amazon, and it's worked for them. I do think the benefit of having Amazon and partnering with them is sort of the ability to minimize marketing costs. If you're going to build an e-com direct business and be solely e-com direct, you really need to have a great digital marketing strategy, from social media to your search engine optimization to influencer, to make sure you're driving traffic. With Amazon, if you have a great product and great reviews and you can get organic results, you've just immediately gotten thousands and thousands, if not millions of eyeballs on your brand name and your product. And a lot of those customers are going to go into Google and search your name, and a huge percentage of them will buy direct from you because they want to buy direct from the brand. Now, with that said, the challenge is holding margin, is maintaining a good margin. I think if you have a strictly e-com direct business, you can maintain a little bit higher margin. But again, I think there's a little bit more front end work in building the traffic and the reputation. The other big challenge for us has been a bicycle doesn't have the same kind of buying cycle as other products. So the thing we need is we need to really be driving a lot of new leads to keep sales growing every single year, because our customers aren't buying a new bike every 3 months, 4 months. If we were in the shoe category, there'd be a much higher percentage of our sales being reoccurring revenue. So the Amazon relationship's been great because you stay ranked high in search relevancy and you can just be consistently driving more eyeballs on the brand, which has been another strategy for us, is how do you then create, more frequency of purchases with a bike, even if most people only buy a bike every 4 to 5 years. How do we drive brand awareness through Amazon, and hopefully get them to buy again from us in, say, a year to 2?
That makes absolute sense. And I think as you're talking about how you get customers back, we've got a couple questions later around, how do you continue to keep your customers engaged, and how they come back, possibly whether it's for accessories or for follow-up bikes, maybe to expand into their family with additional ones. And it's absolutely understandable that the rankings, can make or break a business. So I think the split store strategy makes a ton of sense. And to dive a little bit more deeper on your online presence, I want to talk some about your website, some of the decisions you've made on your website. So, we know every company has to have a website these days. Of course, for an e-com company, it is the business. Can you tell us about some of the decisions you've made with your website that you feel have made positive impacts to the user experience, and converting your visitors to actual buyers? Assuming, over time you've made some adjustments to that. So maybe tell us about some of the great changes you've made to your website.
Yeah. Well, if anyone wants to check, an interesting website is the Wayback Machine. I think waybackmachine.com or .org is it, and you can look at websites in their original form. So if anybody goes and types in my original site, beachbikes.net, in there, you'll see there's been lots of change since then. It's pretty funny. Um, I think, looking back, or originally, the first big change we made was actually going into the Shopify platform, but really it was the platform change. We were operating on a fully managed platform originally, and it made it very difficult for us. We were managing the servers and things ourselves. Um, so we moved to a new platform. That was a big change for us, which is actually something we're doing right now. Um, and that helps in so many facets in terms of website speed, um, the ease of launching new pages, content management, things like that. So that's one of those things that's really changing constantly year over year. And I think the ability to have those processes be simple can really help you leverage conversion rate, get more products up quicker, manage content easier, um, things like that. So we went through that once before. We're going through it right now because the technology has changed and improved so much. The other thing we've done on the front end, we've tried to add a customization element to our website, and building in a custom questionnaire and a custom bicycle builder, actually, where you can change colors, add accessories, things like that. That was a huge piece for us because obviously as a smaller brand, we're trying to fill a niche and really connect with our customers. And our customer base really loves the idea of customization to them and to their lifestyle. So those really brought the engagement up quite a bit and the conversion rate up quite a bit. Um, and it also gives us an idea to really see and watch, like, what are the colors people want? What do they want to do to their bike? What kind of products should we carry? What's the number one accessory they add to their bike? Things like that. So, the customizer and the questionnaire really, not only is it to help get the customer the right bike, but it's also to create the engagement and to have them remember us to be something different, especially in the age of Amazon. You're never going to win with Amazon being, the best logistical play is always going to be buying on Amazon, without a doubt. They're going to get you the product the fastest, the easiest. So what kind of value can we offer? And yeah, the customizer and questionnaire were those things.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important when we talk about consumer purchasing confidence, especially now when most people are ordering things online, things they've never seen in store before or been able to see physically themselves. So it seems like the body fit is a perfect tool in which someone can understand that something is a perfect fit for them. So I'm glad you talked about that. I did have a question as it relates to, have you seen a noticeable change in sales or reduced returns given the new body fit component of the website?
Reduced returns. I don't have an exact metric on that. Um, the conversion rate is definitely increased with body fit. If customers take the fitting questionnaire, that core group of customers converts much higher than a customer that doesn't engage in the questionnaire. Absolutely. And it's something like 10 or 15x what the normal conversion rate is. So getting them into that funnel is huge from a conversion rate standpoint. Absolutely. And aside from that, you've also, and I'm sort of just tracking um, Google Analytics. When I say 10 to 15% more, the conversion rate is actually probably much higher because um, we're capturing their emails and potentially they're purchasing on a mobile phone. And if they're not logged into Google, we may not be able to really fully understand the whole funnel that customer went through. Um, but yes, absolutely. I think the other thing that's been a little challenging for us to really get our hands around metrics right now is because of the whole COVID-19, just sales of bicycles have gone up exponentially industry wide. So the last 4 months, it's kind of difficult to attribute growth to anything in particular. And it's difficult to decipher what is a result of the actions that we've taken and what's a result of just the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think we've been hearing that quite a bit from other companies as well, that there's just a little bit of gray area that's leaving it troubling to decipher where it's truly coming from. But, you know, as thinking about technology, how we capture data and behaviors online, I believe, you know, as we start to see this for a longer period of time, we'll look at the data and we'll be able to start to decipher those things and capitalize on as business owners over time. You know, you and I had talked before this call about decisions around technology, what technology and what, like, integrations specifically, you know, what decisions you've made on integrations. And I'd love to hear how you go about making the best decisions with the integrations, whether it's choosing a chat platform, whether it's choosing, you know, something that ties to your social media or your advertising. Can you tell us about, like, the mindset you go through when you're making these technology decisions?
Yeah, it's actually pretty challenging, to be honest with you. I think, especially in this day and age where you get 100 emails from 100 different companies that all do the same thing, you know, different social media plugins, different customer service platforms, you know, things of that nature. So, I mean, for us in general, we'll narrow it down to say 3 for any, you know, platform. We'll do a trial, check it out, and make the best decision. But I do actually find that to be personally one of the most challenging things. And I think the other challenge is that once you implement something and train your entire company on how to use it, it could be very challenging then to switch if you're not happy with the platform or it doesn't have what you offer. And it's, you know, there's a lot of resources and labor that goes into getting any sort of new app or plugin put into a website or into your system. We are actually going through an ERP change right now, and you know, that's going to be quite the undertaking. And we've hired outside consultants to help, you know, sort of analyze the platforms and what our needs are. We've done a process design where we've kind of looked at what's the outcome and what's the value we're hoping to give back to the customer. So really starting with the customer in mind and what are we hoping that they will get out of us having that app. Um, and then sort of just, you know, working out um, what our process needs to be to give our customers the ultimate value, and seeing which software or integration would line up best with that. But then I still think it's sort of a Hail Mary to some degree, because you don't know until you get in there and you really plug it in and get it working, you know. And I can honestly say, being 100% honest, we've had some misses, you know, where we've put some things into play and it hasn't worked the way we want it to. So, you know, my suggestion is if you can at least minimize the upfront cost, and, you know, the more flexibility they give you, the better. Unfortunately, now a lot of these systems and tools want to get you signed up for a full year. And so it doesn't allow much leniency in terms of backing out of it. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, you kind of answered my next question, which is, just, have there been any decisions you've made with your website that you would caution other e-commerce companies to avoid?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the biggest, you know, the biggest thing for us now is an ERP. And I think if you're an e-com direct company, a lot of what you do can be run through a singular platform. And if you have a simple business with maybe one warehouse, you maybe don't need an ERP system. That's one of the benefits if you're an e-com direct business and you're just focused on just selling direct to the consumer. It can be a much simpler sort of technology play and platform play. When you start getting into managing all these different channels and having the inventory across multiple sales retailers and things like that, that's when it gets to be a little bit more complicated. And so for me, um, the ERP has something I've really dragged my feet on because it's a very big decision, but it's proven to be causing us a lot of challenges, especially as we had major volume increase with the COVID thing. So my recommendation is, if you know you're in a position where you want to expand into other retail channels outside of just selling direct to consumer, you really need to find a good platform that can scale with you. Um, and I don't have great advice on that because I'm going through the transition myself. But um, you know, because eventually it's going to come back to be a problem. I think the hard thing is some of the platforms are very expensive for early entrepreneurs, early ecom direct, and that's the issue I ran into. Is do you really want to spend several $1,000s a month for an ERP system when maybe your sales are less than $1 million a year? Um, so my suggestion is when you get to the level of profitability you feel comfortable with, considering the ERP and the platform, if you want to expand into other sales channels, it's an important thing to do.
Yeah, I think that kind of underscores how important it is not to just make a good decision on a platform, but evaluate whether your company is actually ready for the platform itself. You said there's some things you had to line up for your business first, and then dive into that decision, which is great advice. Beyond SEO and searchability and having a website that really draws that traffic in organically, where are you spending some of your other time, whether it's on social or paid, that are you finding are also good sources of buyers and audience?
You mean for marketing wise? Like how are
For
we?
marketing.
Yeah. So we do a lot on the SEO front. I mean, there's a huge amount of potential in SEO. Thousands and millions of keywords that you can target in on. And so we put a large amount of our time into that. We're also now getting into influencer, which has proved to be very beneficial for us. I think the challenge for us is we have a little bit more expensive of a product than other companies in the influencer space. I know influencer stuff's worked really well in the beauty and makeup industry, but their product costs are maybe a couple dollars versus ours, which are several hundred. And social in particular, Facebook ads have worked really well for us because we're selling a lifestyle. The ability on social to really showcase that in imagery and photos and videos and content, which is something we think we do well. So in SEO and things like that, you really don't get to showcase your brand and the results. Which if you could show an image and what it looks like prior to clicking, it might even drive more clicks to our website. But that's the benefit on social, which has worked for us. And quite honestly, again, because the demand has been so high through COVID, we've actually been turning off a lot of our marketing channels because we came into this year with a whole plan around social and influencer and some affiliate marketing. We had just signed up with Commission Junction to do some affiliate stuff as well. And we ended up turning most of it off or dialing it way back just because there was so much organic sort of search out there for bikes and things like that. And so now we're sort of restructuring and regrouping for 2021 and trying to set forth a whole new digital plan around, okay, when COVID goes away, how are we going to pick up these additional customers to continue to drive growth? And so our initial strategy now is still social. How do we continue to exploit that? There's a lot of niche sort of lifestyles that we can target, moms, dads, single women in their 30s, just different sort of groups of customers and riders, college students. So we haven't even really, gone very deep into that at all. The other piece is influencer and affiliate. We really want to expand into those. The other thing that I'm looking to do is build a really strategic content plan over the next 12 months around what kind of videos are we getting out there. I've been working on YouTube for about a year now, and with very little investment, we've seen huge results from our YouTube channel. And I'm finding YouTube to basically be Google at this point. People are using YouTube pretty much the same as they would use Google. And I've been doing some talking head videos around subjects just related to biking and bike industry, and we've gotten tremendous traction. So I want to double down on that and really be one of the top content providers in the space of leisure recreational bikes, just around, helping people find the right bike for them and answer questions, and create some sales funnels that way.
Yeah, that's all really great news. That as they have said for many years, content is king. As you can show the right thing or say the right thing at the right time when people are looking for it, you're going to excel in business. To speed up, I know we've got about 20 minutes left. So I did want to touch on your customers real quick though, just to make sure we're talking about how you engage them, not necessarily just before the sale, but also after the sale. So a couple of last questions, and then we'll run into some quick Q&A with some of our other team members. With, obviously we know that 630 in terms of business sells bicycles, but obviously you sell experiences as well. And, the excitement of the shopping experience and the joy of course, riding the bicycle itself. But can you just tell us a little bit how you engage customers as a business beyond the sale?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have our email newsletter, and we follow up with tips and emails and things. This has actually been another thing I've sort of transformed or overhauled this year. We're still working on, is I found, email and the engagement of customers through email to sort of be a little dry and bland nowadays because everybody's doing it. So one thing we've set up now is a private group on Facebook called 630 Peddlers. And that's really about getting our fanatical customers into a shared space to encourage each other to post photos and rides and track their rides. And we've also had talks of an app. And we actually do have an app in the works right now, a very simple distance tracking app. So we can get customers engaged, and competing with each other and riding and tracking. And this is all leading back sort of the customer loyalty and the repeat purchasing and creating more of a fanatical fan base. Because, quite honestly, that wasn't part of our strategy early on. And I think I started to realize over time that there is a fanatical base of bike riders in our segment out there that do want to be a part of this culture, and it's sort of underserved. It's very well served in the road bike and mountain bike market, but it's sort of underserved in the recreational leisure bike market. So that's part of our plan for the future, and I think a lot of that will revolve around the app, and the private Facebook group, and ultimately trying to get them into the app as we can develop more technology and things into the app, getting them off the Facebook platform so we can own them. In the sense of like they're in our space, not Facebook space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I imagine, and you can probably confirm that reviews from your existing customers and social media mentions are probably a big way in which you get a handful of your referral traffic and sales.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. We mentioned earlier on the gift card giveaway that people that sign up are also going to be joining your Journey Club newsletter. Can you just tell us a brief, update on that program and how, what kind of content do you distribute there?
Yeah. So through there, a lot of we'll release new products, letting people know what products are coming out. We'll also put out newsletter regarding some of the best rides in the US, different locations, cities, things like that. Again, in particular, as it relates to somebody who wants to ride more, leisurely, these are rides that are not going to be, someone that wants to ride 25 miles an hour for 50 miles. So that's kind of the benefit to our club, is we're trying to connect on that more leisure recreational level. So yeah, it's rides in your area, it's new products, it's what's happening, new changes to the website, things all like that.
That app sounds perfect for someone like me. I'd much rather take that leisurely ride as opposed to our CEO, Ville Puto, who I think he's a special guest, wants to pop in here and say hello, Dustin. And I do have a question for both of you now that he's joined.
Of course I do. Thanks, Dustin. Thanks for a good presentation. Good tips for everyone. And we are obviously proud for having you and also being able to work with you as your technology partner on the bikes. Yeah. So if we raised, so I'm ready to go whenever. I have a couple of your bikes too in the car, so we have the same gear. And I'm not sure if I can actually if I can beat this guy, but maybe with my race helmet, I'll do fine.
That's pretty
So,
funny.
when do we go?
At least I win on hair.
Amazing. Thanks, Vile. Thanks for popping in. So, let's get to the part of the webinar here to wrap it up, where we would like to take a few questions from the audience. I know a few popped in here, Dustin, so maybe we'll just answer these, and then if there's any more questions after that, we can go ahead and do the giveaway before the end of the hour. So just to start the question, you had mentioned that the e-commerce scene for bikes is still pretty new. How do you see it evolving in the future? Maybe not in the next 3 months, but what do you see in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just going to be continued adoption of e-commerce in general. I think this year has been a big shift where, we have to wait to see when the dust settles, but I do think e-commerce is going to come out of COVID just having more people trusting the process of buying online. I'm also hoping, more people will trust the process of buying bikes online. So I think there's going to be continued trust and faith in buying bikes online, especially as we can develop more technology around how to better fit people to a bike and give them a similar experience they'd have in a bike shop, but digitally. And so, yeah, I see it going nowhere but up. And I also think there's going to have to be a more integrated approach to e-commerce and store between the bike industry, and how that plays out, I don't know. I mean, right now it's sort of maintaining a similar structure to how it's always been with the brick and mortar, but I wouldn't be surprised to see more of an evolution in terms of, who knows, bike dispensers or things you're seeing in the car industry. I forget the name of that car company that now has the car dispensers, where you literally show up and it's like a vending machine for your car. I think when, those kind of industries where there's a lot more money will blaze the trail, but I could see technologies like that coming down to the bike industry over the next, 5 to 10 years as well. So.
Really great points. One of the other questions we had, and of course, feel free to share what you're comfortable sharing, is what your customer acquisition cost is as a percentage, and has it increased or decreased during the pandemic?
It's definitely gone down substantially. That's actually a metric I don't have my finger on the pulse very, very great, or very well for. I probably should. If I had to guess, I would say it's about 10% of the sale price is our cost per acquisition, which is why margin for us has always been a challenge selling online, especially when we don't have a ton of reoccurring customers. So that's been something that we've tried to shift over the last few years, is how do we get more repeat purchases without having to spend the money? And that's why the bike industry is a little bit more challenging, I think, of other industries in terms of selling online, especially at our price point, which is why electric bikes have opened up a bigger opportunity for us, because it's a little bit bigger margin product, gives us a little more leeway, which, you've seen a few other electric e-com direct companies pop up recently and doing pretty well. So that whole market is a whole other opportunity in and of itself. But yeah, as I said regarding marketing with COVID, we're very blessed to be sort of in the position we're in with the bike industry, having now like a high unit sales for the last 50 years, where we've literally turned off all marketing across all channels except for our SEO, because that's just an ongoing thing. But we're not really spending on AdWords. We're barely doing social media. And we used to advertise on the Amazon platform, and that's all been zero as well. So.
Definitely quite the experience. I know a lot of businesses don't, have to try a little bit harder these days to get more attention, and companies like yours are really doing a great job of making sure the exposure is there. And I think through a organic presence that you have, again, buyer confidence is definitely up, and people are just making it part of the new normal to order products online and feel good about theirs based on reviews and quantity of searches they find. So all the presence you have online is phenomenal. We congratulate you on that growth. I think it's pretty amazing. If you're ready, I'd love to award someone to get to try one of your new bikes by giving them a gift card. Shall we choose a winner? And
Let's do it.
any questions that do come in after we just wrap this up, we'll be sure to get some answers, and we'll post it to our meetup site for this as well. So feel free to keep flowing in the questions, and we'll be sure to get them answered. But yeah, let's pick at random. We've got quite a few signups during the hour. Dustin, do you want to pick an email or a name out of the list of signups today?
You guys can do it. Feel free. That way I won't, because some of the people I know, so it might be better if you or we randomize it somehow.
I think these all might be friends of Vile, or maybe they're all Vile, but they just anonymous names.
Vile Jr., Vile Senior, Vile the Third.
Yeah,
it's a very common name in Orange County.
Vile, I'm going to have you pick a number between 1 and 25. What that number is, we'll say the winner.
25.
25, perfect. All right, 25. We've got Claire Kim. Claire Kim, you are the winner of $250 gift card from 630. So we will get in touch with you, or Dustin will get in touch with you and let you know how we can provide that to you and help you pick out a bike that suits your need. I encourage you to do the body fit on his website, because that'll actually really help identify what's going to be best suited for you. But I want to thank Dustin today. He's been a phenomenal guest for us and gave us a really good opportunity to do this a little bit differently with business strategy. We are going to resume additional talks in the future related to technology and design. So our next Vincent Talks will be tech focused on, we'll actually have some special guests from our Finland group to talk about accessibility. So we're tentatively scheduled for August 20th at noon, same time as this talk. The date may shift a little bit, but we'll be sure to send out communications letting you know. Dustin, is there any parting words, or Vile, any parting words before we jump off with our guests?
No, 630.com. Enjoy the ride.
Perfect.
Exactly. Go there, and if you decide to use Amazon, just to point out, if you search for a beach cruiser, his bikes are the first 2 results, and also the best seller on Amazon, so you can't miss it. At 630.com. Thanks for participating.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.